how they always say like the trauma was embedded in our DNA and just passed on and all of this, like would a therapy session be enough?
So, no, right? Because this wasn't just like trauma by the hands of bad people. This was a system. This was the law. This was legal. like this is like so okay, I was listening to a live recently. Was it Lupe Fiasco maybe? I think it was Lupe actually. But he said something about how he doesn't think that we should learn about slavery in history class. Like it should be like a psychology type of lesson. Um, and that and I it was very interesting because I never heard anyone like frame it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But when I thought more about it, I was just like, yes, because these aren't okay. I think both, right? Like I feel like history teaches you facts, but
Mm-hmm.
like psychology would teach us how you were just saying about that trauma. Like it would help us confront it and treat it way more seriously than we do now. Because right
Right.
now it's just like a thing of the past, right? But
But do
like
I don't even want to cut you off, but this thought
no.
just popped into my mind. Do you think that if we were never taught about it, that just Black people on our faces would still operate the same way that we do? Because I don't think a lot of people were just that astute in their studies. Some of that stuff has just been generationally passed down. Like even if they never taught it to us in history class, wouldn't we still feel the pains and the struggle and just all of the repercussions, the leftover just grud from slavery automatically without anyone ever teaching us?
Um okay, so I guess I can only speak from my perspective, and the way I learned about slavery at home was totally different from the way that I learned about it in school. In
Mm-hmm.
school, when I learned about it, it was something to be ashamed of, right? It was something that like was embarrassing to me if I'm being frank.
Mm-hmm.
But when I learned about it at home, it just was very empowering. It was like we've been through so much and we're still
Yeah.
here, right? And so like I think from my perspective, if I had never learned about slavery in school, um, I feel like I would have been better off. like I feel like it would have been better off. There was a point, girl, I was in the third or fourth grade, and my teacher, Mrs. Blankership from William Rudolph Elementary School in Asheville, North Carolina, girl, she divided the class up into slaves and slaveholders.
No, she didn't.
Yes,
You
I
you were
promise
like
you.
considerably younger than me. What? No. No, she did not.
I promise you. I promise you. I put
No.
it on my life. I am 31 years old. 1989. If anybody else is in that class who's watching this right now, sound
Uh-uh.
off.
No.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And I was a slave.
No.
And I remember being like, just so like embarrassed. Like,
Literally is that for a child? Like what the fuck? Like that's a whole ass lawsuit in this decade.
girl, and the school was predominantly black. So I only had a few white kids in my classroom, and I
No.
believe most of the white men ended up being slaveholders. Like
Uh,
that's how it's replaying in my mind.
I
I
cannot.
promise you.
I'm
I promise
wow.
you. I promise you.
I'm speechless.
Yeah, and so had I not had experiences like that, and like I'm a army brat, so I lived all over the United States, and like Black History Month was like not fun for me,
Oh my god.
especially since well William Randolph was a predominantly black school, but or it may have been mixed, but my classroom was predominantly black, but um I ended up going to a ton of white predominantly schools. And
Mhm.
so like having to like talk about Harriet Tubman wasn't fun to me. Like it or like
I can see how it would be uncomfortable.
very
As
uncomfortable.
a child, especially, it would be very uncomfortable. Like
Yeah.
you're put on the spot, like you're getting all this white gaze that your 8-year-old self didn't ask for because it's obvious. Like, oh, Miss
And
Blankenship.
oh girl, and she probably dead now, God rest her soul.
She obviously came from an era that she thought that was right. Cause I know I'm a little older than you, but God, and I grew up in like Texas, like the South. I
hmm
can't think of. Child, please. My daddy, God rest his soul, would have lost his shit. Like he would have been right up there. Like what the hell? Back in
No.
'85, whatever year, he would have not. It wouldn't have went. Like
Look,
point. Period.
my mom was a younger mom, but I think it was so normal to me by then that I don't even think I told my mother. Like I feel like if I were to tell I you know what, I feel like we did talk about this recently and she didn't
Oh
know. She
my
was just like, "Oh my goodness, really?"
God,
Because
that's traumatic.
yes, as a child,
That's traumatic.
I didn't think anything was wrong with that.
Hmm. See, I kind of grew up in a household. My daddy was very much so woke.
Mhm.
So I'm getting drilled as a little girl. I went to school already with my eye like, all right, watch them, watch them, watch them. Like I already knew ahead before I even got stepped on the yard in kindergarten. I probably was like, all right, whatever. Like I knew what was going on. So that would not have flown. All I would have to say was slaves and something white woman. And William Hamilton would have had his ass up right at that school. My mama probably would have been like, oh no, what are you doing? It's okay. But my daddy, oh no,
Girl.
that's traumatic. And I'm sorry
Yeah.
you had to deal with that because that probably
Thank you.
skewed how you felt in your classes for like years. Like that is a traumatic experience.
Girl, until college, I had a very mass awakening in college, right? But like I remember having debates with people. Oh God, I'm really exposing myself. I remember having debates with people in middle school. At this time, I was at Snelson Golden Middle School in Hinesville, Georgia. And I
Mm.
remember like being in Georgia studies class because you learned about Georgia history. I can
Yes.
name all the Confederate soldiers because it's Georgia. But I remember like hearing a comment about um, Black people bringing it upon themselves and not getting angered by it. I remember that. I
Okay.
remember that. And it's
That's
just like how brainwashed I was because a lot of the, even though like my family is super proud to be Black, right? Like each time I study Black history, though,
mm,
I am less than,
yeah.
right? So,
That's
yes, to
that's
that point,
legit.
I yeah, I would have way preferred not to have learned about it in school, honestly and truly. And that's not, you know what? Not every household is like ours. And so like there is a I feel like you will run into like a ton of erasure if you did
Mhm.
take it out of schools.
Oh
But
yeah.
you know, the way that like these conversations should be framed, it needs to change. Like, and I pray it's changed. I mean, I
I
have a
hope
7-year-old.
it's people talking about us. That's damn near akin to your teacher telling kindergartners, we gonna play pimps up, hoes down, y'all gonna be y'all gonna be the pimps. Like that's pretty much what that's akin to. Like, what the fuck? Like
Girl,
the stories that you hear on the news where whole school districts are getting sued in the 2020s. Like stuff
now.
like that should not fly. And the fact that it
Mm-mm.
is just like despicable. I feel bad. That's horrible.
So I would love to say that I'm over it, but it's still like a
No,
lingering
that's
memory.
like low key traumatic for a child.
Hmm.
And it makes me wonder what your peers are. How was their once y'all got out of that class, what was their mindset set of self, or how did they view just relations with Black and white people after that class? Because that shit is fucking traumatic. Like that's something that you're gonna remember. Like you were in that grade X amount of years ago, but just the trauma of that happening to you, it's stuck. Like it may not be on the forefront of your mind every day,
Girl,
but
yeah.
like this or even conversations like this would bring it up. I want to
Yes.
know how those other children fared off. Like
I
were
would
they
love to know
ever
that too.
educated? Yeah, like were they ever re-educated? Were they ever given the opportunity to see the other side of things? Were they able to see the strength in our struggle versus just damn, I was a slave today. Like, whoa.
So here's the thing, interestingly enough, my class, most of the Black kids that I were friends with in my class, like we all lived in the projects together. And so like I wonder if they if it would just like, okay, two, when you're busting from the projects, there's a stigma that's already attached to you,
Already,
right? And so
already
like,
label.
yeah, and so I wonder if it like if we all just like walked away from it because we're used to being like the poor kids, or you know
Really,
what I mean?
like, okay, this, like me, I didn't grow up in an affluent neighborhood. I grew up in the hood too, but like I said, I had a parent who was woke as fuck. So even my little throw my gang signs up, Acres Homes for Houston, this North Side Trill self would have came home and been like, this bitch said we were slaves today, and it would have been a problem. But someone who did not grow up with a parent who raised you with the heightened awareness of like self and race relations and things of that nature, like other little kids really would know, that could have fucked up little Jimmy forever. Like he really could be out here with the mentality like, damn, I was a slave in the 4th grade. Nigga went to 5th grade and it's like, oh shit, well,
I'm a
I'm
slave now.
still here. Like you put me in this position as a child, and I'm okay with it because nobody ever told me that that was wrong.
Yeah. No. I don't even remember what she was trying to teach us.
Like, what did she have y'all do? And like, what could you have possibly
it's so
taught
lazy.
about
Like,
nothing?
yes. It's
I don't
so
see a
lazy.